members are present, with the exception of Denise Donnelly, who informed me earlier yesterday that she probably would not be here for personal reasons. So we'll be operating with 4 members at this point. So as we always do, we'll begin our meeting with a public comment period. This allows members of the public to comment on anything relating to planning. Obviously we've got a lot going on coming up. We've got public hearings on the 26th and 27th on the zoning changes that have been working on with MAPC. There are going to be a lot of comments then. I don't think it would be necessarily that productive to get into all of that now, but I guess members of the public can comment on what they want to comment on. So that being said, does anybody have their hand up, Kelsey?
I'm not seeing anyone, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. All right. So we do have 2 sets of minutes, but the November 4 and November 18, but the November 18 minutes did not make it to the agenda. They're quite extensive. So, so let's just deal tonight with the minutes from November 4. And as is always the case, does anybody have any additions, corrections, or deletions to those minutes that are necessary?
Define necessary.
What?
I said define necessary. There's a lot of things in here that are wrong.
Something that could be wrong, I guess punctuation could be necessary, although less necessary than saying something that wasn't really said or something different than what's said.
Yeah.
That's more.
Okay.
Here. But we don't, we didn't have any, there weren't any applications pending. So when there's an application and there's discussion about an application, then what is said becomes more important than simply a dialogue with our consultant, which this essentially was on November 4th, except for a couple of 2 matters relating to pending applications. So go ahead. If anybody has anything they think that needs to be changed, let's do it.
I've got a few things. Page 1, the last paragraph, second line. Residential AA units. Do we have AA?
What?
What's an AA unit?
Well, I believe in this context, it's the zoning district, AA zoning district. That's the reference.
Okay.
Not Alcoholics Anonymous.
Although we could use some of those.
Yeah. So that's, yeah.
Okay, there's a couple we can skip because they're not necessary. Let's go to the second page, the 3rd full paragraph, 3rd line, wastewater usage. That should be wastewater discharge.
Okay.
And on 3rd page, member items in the middle. This will allow the board to accept CPC funding. That's not our board. That's about the trust, I think, accepting CPC funding.
Yeah, because yeah, she's talking about the Affordable Housing Trust. So yes, that would make sense.
I think that the only other thing is sort of Harry's at the bottom of page 2. It says that a unanimous vote. I thought Harry voted against 11 Beach.
I did.
Well, now that's an important change. So
Finally, something useful.
no, so yeah, I remember, Harry, you did vote against it. And Donnelly moved to approve the letter I think that would be the decision we're talking about. And so I'm going to change that, and then we'll break it down the way we discussed, meaning Harry being one in opposition, but the motion passes 4-1, just like the previous motion.
Previous motion also says approve the letter.
Yeah, well, I'll change that too.
Change both of them.
Yep.
That's all that matters to
Okay.
me.
Anyone else?
Tom saved me.
I'm sorry?
Tom saved me.
Oh, you were going to say that anyhow, weren't you?
Thank you. Okay.
Well, actually, I couldn't because I didn't have the minutes.
Oh,
All right. Well, then do I have a motion to approve the November 4 minutes with the corrections that have been stated?
so moved. So moved.
Second,
Seconded by Peter. Roll call vote. Tom,
Aye.
Harry,
Abstain.
Pete, you what?
I have to abstain. I didn't read the minutes.
Oh, you haven't, what do you mean you didn't? You haven't read
I
them? Was
I
what you-
didn't get them. I've gone through my inbox and I don't have them.
That's,
I- Yeah, I have the 18th, but I don't have the fourth.
okay. So, all right, so you're not gonna, no vote on that. And Peter? Peter, can you hear me?
yes.
Are you voting on this?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, yes, aye.
All right, I'll vote in favor, so that would be 3 in favor, 1 absence, and 1 abstention. All right. Okay. And then we'll deal with the November 18th meeting minutes at our next meeting in January.
I can comment on those.
You can always comment, Harry.
No. I just,
They're
All
short.
right, so next item on the agenda is reviews of zoning bylaws to be filed with the town clerk for public hearings. Let me just elaborate on that a little bit. I did not mean that we were at this stage in the game reviewing these various changes for, any kind of major substantive discussion. I mean, we've had these things for months, and this is simply to show all of you how we've tried to break this down, and I've been in touch with Chris Kushel about this. So somebody could understand when they want to go look at the documents prior to the public hearing, what they're looking at. In other words, what has to be approved by a simple majority? What has to be approved by the 2/3? What's new? What isn't? All the changes that we're proposing will be redlined, so because otherwise it would be impossible for someone to understand if we just gave them a unedited version of what was new and what wasn't, pretty much. So what you've seen is what's going to be filed. Now, there are a couple of things, and I did talk with Chris Kushel about this, that I wanted to discuss in chapter 14 of the main body of the bylaws, the ones that need to be approved by the 2/3 vote. Because I think there was a portion of that chapter 14, which was enforcement and administration, which no one really looked at. I know I hadn't been looking at it. It's kind of like no one was paying attention to it, but I started to look at it and thought, there may be some things we need to discuss here just before we sign off on some of this stuff. So that's something that I thought we might talk about, but the rest of it, I have, as you can see, the maps have been revised. Not, the lines haven't been revised, nothing in terms of the anything. There's no surprises there. It's just that the way they're done, the coloring, the key in the town map has been changed to reflect the transit-oriented village development overlay district as opposed to multi-use district. So there's no confusion there. The overlay district for that district has been shown on the town zoning map as an overlay district. In other words, it doesn't supplant the residential district zoning that's there. It's like it just shows a little hash mark, a white hash marks to show this is where the overlay district is located. Because as we know, an overlay district is just what it is. It doesn't supersede the underlying zoning, but it's an option for someone. So that's in the current, that's in the map the way it's done now. All of these things will be filed with the town clerk as of next week. Our public notice will be first published on the 12th of January, because that's our deadline for doing it, for the 26th. It will be published again in the following week. And then we'll have our first public hearing, which will be conducted concerning the existing zoning and all the changes that have been made, the changes to some wording, the changes to section numbers. And these are all, a lot of these are mechanical changes that no one's going to get very excited about. The cleaning up of the definitions to eliminate obviously archaic definitions such as boarding house, things like that. So, you know, those will all be on file. We're not, and we've been talking about those for months now, so there's no reason to go over them again and again. So I know, Peter, you sent an email earlier today. I haven't really had a chance to study it. Is this, you want to talk about what you're?
Yeah, especially since this is more typography and clarity. In the very first part of the text on uses, we define what the letters are for the different zoning areas, districts. And then we say
about this, the zoning bylaw, right?
Yeah.
You have a page so you can refer.
Sorry, do you have that one I sent you?
Yeah, well, I got one page.
Yeah, why don't you share that? Because I just cut out all 5 pieces.
Zoning. Is that it?
Can you share the screen, or should I share my
I
screen?
haven't even saved it as a document, so.
Okay, can Kelsey let me share?
I mean, I could save it and then share it, but right
No,
now.
I've got it open if Kelsey will let me share.
Okay, why don't you do that?
You're good, Mr. Kuttner.
Thank you. So this is the piece I sent around, just cutting little pieces off of it. In this upper left-hand corner here, we say the districts will be, we define the SRAA, SRRA, and then we say it'll be defined denoted on the zoning map by the appropriate letters as indicated. So my concern was this is all a little like complicated to most people, and it'd be nice if we were consistent. So we say it will be on the zoning map, and it's not. Zoning map uses.
Are you referring, I'm sorry, just so I understand, are you referring to you have a light blue key here?
Yeah, I'll tell you what each of these are. The first one here is the establishment of districts. The second one then is the uses table. The third one is the area dimensions table. The fourth one is the key that we're showing on our transit oriented development map or village map. And the third one is the key that's on our zoning map. And
Okay.
they all they put the zoning districts in 3 different orders, depending on which one they are. The use group uses the initials. The schedule of dimensions uses both. The revised, the transit-oriented village district uses just the initials and color keys. And then our zoning map uses an entirely different group of colors and spells them out. And they put them in different order in each of these things. Some of them put downtown and general at the beginning. So I was just trying to advocate for why don't we use the letters, explain what they are, use the same colors and put them in the same order. Because it's bad enough to jump around the zoning ordinance to 5 different places.
So what you're doing,
This is all clerical and just to
yeah, I was gonna
understand
say,
it.
then that's fine. So we can, if it's just a clerical thing.
Yeah, these are all things nobody has to vote on.
Yeah, exactly. So we can just change, I mean, we don't even have to do it today. We
Right.
do it. It's not, it's not going to change any of the substantive aspects of what
Absolutely.
what people are looking at. It's just a matter of kind of how it's going to be laid out, which is, I mean, a public hearing isn't a final say on anything. That's why you have a public hearing. You want to hear what the public has to say. So we certainly have the ability to do exactly what you did here. I have to confess, I need to look at this a little more. It sounds good, but maybe, maybe with a little more time, we can do that. And maybe at the end of the day, kind of.
Yeah. I've been
reorder.
reading all the letters to the editor about the Gloucester zoning changes. And so many of them are confusing what areas are going to have higher density, what areas are changing the height limits, what area. So I think it's whatever we can do to simplify the story here, I think will
Yeah,
be good.
no, that's fine. Yep.
Anyway, that's all it was.
Okay, well then that's,
And I think you said you've already changed the new multi-use zone code for the plan, the zoning district.
yeah.
Okay.
So, but, yeah, so let's follow through on this. I mean, if we don't do it tonight, do it between now and the public hearing. And
Yeah. And if you want me to talk to somebody, I can talk to him as
that
well.
would be Robert Craig, the guy at
The
DP.
GIS guy.
Yeah, he's very good and he's very responsive.
And
So,
who actually types our zoning ordinance?
well, right now, I mean, Chris, the MAPC has done the type.
Oh, they're doing it. Okay.
Yeah, we haven't been doing that. They're doing it.
But just to make it less, for instance, like you mentioned earlier, that section 14 on administration.
Yeah.
So I went to look at it and I noticed the tabs on the side of the page go all the way up to 15, which doesn't exist. And the table of contents, it's mislabeled section 4. So just
Yeah, I
more,
hear what you're
more
saying.
stuff to clean up.
This is just, it sounds like you're on the road to cleaning it up.
Yeah,
So why don't you continue? I'm
I
serious.
will.
This is a big job and they're all different aspects of it. And one of them that you're pointing out is an important one, is getting the references right. I mean, it's a big deal. So, all right, I will be in touch. And I guess maybe Chris and Craig need to be involved with this to a certain extent too.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, great. Thank you. Okay. Unless somebody has something else, I just want to talk about some of the things in this chapter 14 that I did talk about with Chris a few days ago.
When you're done with that, I had some things on the meeting notice, the hearing notice.
Okay, well, why don't we take that first?
Okay,
Just the public notice.
yep.
Yeah.
Rockport Planning Board notice of public hearings. So you're talking about the 2 days and the different topics and the different things there. The second day, you say it only requires a simple majority vote. but you don't say on the first day that it requires 2/3 vote. I don't expect everybody to know that.
Okay, but doesn't the actual draft of the document state at the very top? Should state at the top, 2/3 voter is required, simple majority is required. So are you talking about the notice itself? or
Yeah,
the-
in the meeting notice,
Okay,
notice of hearing.
yeah, fine, okay,
So I think it'd be good to add that the first day is about stuff that requires a 2/3 vote.
yeah, okay.
And then at the bottom of page 2, I think it's not worded very well. It says an ADU must have a lot area of 2 dwelling units.
Yeah, I thought that was hard to understand.
I kind of lifted it from, let me just see, Chris Cushell's notice here. Let's see what he said.
There's like some words missing.
Yeah, well, there may be. This is on ADU. Okay,
Yeah, the third line under ADU dot.
okay, got it.
Maybe the requirement that a parcel with an ADU must have a lot area of something like that.
Okay,
I don't know what the original wording was, but,
yeah, I'll take care of that. It might just be a typo.
and the final thing is at the bottom where you talk about full text being available, town clerk's office
Yeah.
and planning board office during regular business hours.
Yeah,
Planning board doesn't have the same regular business hours, so that might be misleading. Somebody thinks they could come in 9, between 8 to 4 on any weekday. Well,
well, we do have regular business hours, they're just different from the town clerk's regular business hours. We have Mary has regular hours, but it's not every day of the week. Is that what you're meaning?
yeah, and somebody who doesn't even know what the clerk's hours might think, hey, this is a 9 to 5 thing. Maybe we should be a little clearer about the
Just say the
hours.
times.
Yeah,
Okay, you mean you actually want to state all the times for every day that the
or,
office,
or
because
refer to,
the clerk's office isn't open, for example, on Friday, they close early.
right, and they're open late on Tuesday.
But
So,
like, are people that unable to find this out on their, I mean, I don't mind putting it in, but I mean, at some point, like, you can call up the clerk's office and say, hey, when are you open, right? I mean, it's not crazy to think of.
Never, we're under COVID restrictions.
They can go in there. Just have to wear a mask. Yeah. Plus this stuff's gonna be online too, So,
maybe refer to the website for the hours. I just think somebody might mistakenly make a trip.
okay, well, we don't want that to happen.
No, especially if it's snowing. All I got.
Okay. Good. Now, all right, let's talk a little about enforcement. I did talk to Chris about, it seemed like this stuff was plugged in by MAPC without a whole lot of thought, some of it. For example, it talks about, certificates of occupancy and I said to Chris, you got to tie this back to zoning. The certificate of occupancy is a building permit issue. And so he's going to make some changes to those to make sure that it's actually referencing compliance with the zoning law and we're not talking about the building code here because that really doesn't belong in our zoning bylaw. But the other thing I wanted to talk about too was actually the more important for our purposes is the Board of Appeals. There was some discussion early on about the term of the members of the Board of Appeals. And they're on a 5-year term, and in theory, every year, one of their members, their 5 years expires, and they need to be, either reappointed or else somebody else, if they decide they're not interested anymore, or the board doesn't want to appoint them, the Board of Selectmen, somebody else has to be appointed. But it's a 5-year staggered term with one seat opening every 5 years. We had changed that in our draft to 3 years. And we really didn't do it. I don't think we ran this by the Zoning Board of Appeals before we did that, or the Board of Selectmen. I'm a little uncomfortable just dropping this out there. And to me, 5 years or 3 years doesn't make a whole lot of difference. And I would suggest that we just leave it at the 5 years. Why create an issue when we have so many other things to talk about with the zoning bylaws? That's my thought.
My comment is that it belongs with the Board of Selectmen anyway. They're the ones that determine. So we can't very well go changing bylaws and inserting language where that isn't.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem right to me for us to decide we're going to change the term of appointment that's made by the Board of Selectmen without the Board of Selectmen saying, that's a good idea. We think we want to do that,
Yep.
I think for us to just go ahead and write it into the law, it's going to catch some people by surprise. It's going to create, I think, some consternation that we just decided to do this. And I don't think we've got a lot of other things in here that are going to be controversial. Why create a controversy about this? Whatever one thinks about the Zoning Board of Appeals, is this the thing we want to create a controversy about?
Let's ask Herm what he thinks.
Well, no, let's not.
You want to know what the selectmen think? We got one.
No. Let's stop that for now.
Leave it.
Of course, Herm he has a chance to talk at some point. But anyway, that's just one thing. And the other thing is, what we're doing in the zoning changes is that we're as a planning board is going to have a lot more special permit authority than we have currently. In other words, for the TOD, the Transit Oriented Development Overlay District, we're going to be the special permit issuing authority. For the open space residential development, we're going to be the special permitting authority on that. For the ADUs, we're going to be the special permitting authority on that. These are all new areas that the Zoning Board of Appeals has never had jurisdiction over. So, and I'm fine with that. Let them continue doing, obviously they're doing the variances. Let them continue with their special permit authority that exists now, which is, they vary some of the side yard setbacks. I know that's sometimes frustrating, but on the other hand, do we really want to, as a planning board, start having applications for side yard setback variance, special permit granting? I don't think we want to do that. We're going to have a lot of other things to be doing here. So that's just my thinking. And if you look on page 101, at the top of the page, it says special permits shall only be issued following a public hearings held within the period established by law after the filing of an application with the planning board, or it says, or other special permit granting authority. I asked Chris and he agreed that it should be changed to the planning board or the zoning board of appeals. So we're not, other special permit granting authority like it's some mystery, It's a ZBA. So those were my only comments. Other than ones that, things like I talked about with you already, that things that were in here that simply didn't belong. Chris Kushel agreed. He said, these got plugged in. I don't think a lot of thought went into them, and they're going to be redone and, made more consistent with what the law is.
How are we going to be showing this at the public hearing?
Showing what?
The changes, we're not going to show the edits in the right-hand column, I assume.
No, we're not going to look. We are not going to go through a public hearing and try to explain every single change that's been made to the zoning law. That would just take forever and it would be confusing.
Are we going to show them a complete new one, or are we going to show them one with crossouts?
Wait a second. Let me just get this straight. This is a public hearing. Chris Kushel is going to talk about kind of the bigger picture here, what was done in the main bylaws and what we're done to add these sections, the ADUs, the transit-oriented development, and the other ones.
Open space.
We have to make an assumption that people who want to, who are going to comment on, after hearing from him for 20 minutes, kind of talking about all this stuff, that the minutia of these changes is going to be something that people who want to comment have read. We can't go to a public hearing and try to explain every change that's made in all these, in all these bylaws. Don't you agree?
It's just in the past, I've seen documents that had the old stuff crossed out and the new stuff replacing it. So
Red line.
you were looking at one
You're
document.
gonna have, that's what everyone's gonna see. That's what
Okay,
we filed with the clerk's office, where it's gonna be the old stuff crossed out and the new stuff in, red line. So everyone will see what, it'll kind of be like when you see legislation if you look at
yeah.
Congress, when you look at legislation, they have the brackets around things that are being deleted and the underlines for things that are being added. Well, we're gonna have a line through the things being deleted and the underline for the things being added, so people can sit down and read this stuff and understand what we're doing. But they will have some guidance as to what we're doing. I don't know any other way to do it, Peter.
No, I was afraid we were going to just give them a done deal.
What do you mean?
No, without the crossouts.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, I don't know how anybody would figure, everything that's going to be filed with the public in the clerk's office is going to have all of the stuff like we've been looking at for the last few months. Exactly.
So in the documents that we have blue underline and red underline. What's the difference?
There really is no difference. It was just, I asked Chris that exact same question. It's just a matter of who made the edits,
Okay.
I think Chris's came up as blue and
Yeah, there's some brown ones too.
it was red or something like that, but it's the same,
So is that the way it will appear in the public?
Well, that's a good question. Should we, it would be easy for them to make them all one color, right? Would that be better?
If you're printed in black and white, it will be one color.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the differentiation in the colors is simply who prepared the edits, so you can track.
That's
The document gets circulated.
exactly the reason.
Yeah.
For it. Yeah.
So I imagine that when it goes to public comment, you see it in another document, that differentiation will be gone. It'll just be a red line or one blue line,
Yeah.
whatever color you choose.
Yeah, we can do that. Absolutely. And it will be online too, for those who can look at these things online. It'll be there. And it'll also be the same exact documents will be filed in both the planning board office and the town clerk's office. Okay, and as you see, each document, each section describes the required vote to approve it. So people will know what's what.
Can we go back to your comments about who decides on special permit? Who has jurisdiction over certain things?
The way I understand it, Tom, is that we're gonna have jurisdiction over basically over the new special permit authority is gonna be with the planning board, the stuff that has never existed before.
Okay,
But the ZBA will continue to have the special permit authority that it has in the past.
okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, I'm still a little uneasy having seen how the special permits get decided. But
Well, look, that's another issue, is,
yeah,
you know, yeah.
is it going to be more clear, the difference between special permits and variances? Because that had been a bit blurred in the past.
I'm sorry, it blurred. Well, you know, it is blurred. And when you read the standard for special permits, and I talked with Chris about that. Because I looked at the Massachusetts general law about which defines special permits and it defines variances, and they are different. And I said, how come what seem to be variances are granted under the name of special permits? Why is that happening? And Chris's answer to that was that's actually fairly common in Massachusetts.
Wow.
I confirmed that with town council. You know, it's like, it's this thing that variances, like, for example, a lot line, if you want to decrease the side yard line. Well, in my experience, being a New York lawyer, is that's a variance request. You know, it's called an area variance. It's not the same as a use variance, but it's still a variance. You don't have that. We don't have that here in Massachusetts. There's no area variance. There's just a variance and a special permit.
Yeah.
So essentially what the ZBA is doing is taking what in New York would be called an area variance and granting those under the name of special permits. But apparently that's not uncommon. I was, you know, I had the same question you did.
And the procedure I've seen is the application to the Board of Appeals is requesting a special permit or variance. You don't
Yeah,
have to
right.
specify
It's like
it.
whatever fits, give it to me, you know?
And they're going to the meeting and then the Board of Appeals decides which one it is.
Yeah.
I think it'd be good to know ahead of time, but that's asking a lot.
Well, all I can say is the things that these new provisions that we're going to be, hopefully that the town will approve, will give the planning board some additional special permit authority, which we did not have before.
Okay.
And then we can be criticized. Okay, so that's all I have.
There There is that email you sent us from Amy Questle that goes into about several pages of special permit versus variance. It was pretty good.
Yeah, yeah,
You sent it back in October 12th, so
yeah.
you
it
could
kinda
check your
confirms-
email.
Yeah. I mean, without going into, council's opinions, it seems like she was kind of in agreement with what I just said.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
she quoted several court cases that sort
Yeah.
of pushed it that way.
They're court cases.
Yeah,
So it's not
it
like
pushed us there.
picking it up. These are courts that are saying you can essentially grant what would ordinarily be considered a variance as a special permit grant. So it's kind of like, that's it. You have that memo, don't you, Tom?
I don't understand it. It doesn't make logical sense. It should,
Okay, well.
seems like it should be one or the other. And
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, that's it. That's all I have,
Jason, did you finish with your talk about the enforcement section?
That's the only thing that, other than things that Chris was absolutely in agreement that like, look, this shouldn't be here. I mean, I don't necessarily have to go over those, but those are the only two things that I wanted to bring up with this board because I didn't, want to make any changes of that nature without first discussing it with
Yeah.
the board, to make sure that but just to understand that the zoning board of appeals will continue to have its special permit authority that it has exercised up to, throughout now. Okay. That's it for me. Unless there's anything else, we can go on to the next item on the agenda, which I think is member items. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, member items. That, everyone okay with that?
I'm good.
Okay. No member,
Jason, I don't know if today's an appropriate day, but we've got some time. I've got some data from Banker and Tradesman on median home prices, units sold during the past forever on an annual basis.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that, Harry.
Sorry, Jason. I've got data that I derived from Banker and Tradesman. And it kind of puts into perspective where we're at with affordable housing. I could present that tonight very quickly, or we could present it some other time, perhaps when it's more appropriate.
I think Denise would be interested.
Well, yeah, Denise, I think would be. You want to hold that to the next, you want to hold that to the next meeting? I'll put it on the agenda.
Fine with me.
Okay. That way it'll be an agenda item too.
All right.
Okay. Remind me, all right, will you, when we get closer to the.
You bet. Yeah, you bet.
Okay, thank you. Oh, that's good. It's kind of an eye opener, I bet, too.
Oh, indeed it is.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So,
I can mention a couple things.
yeah,
Long Beach Options Committee continues to meet and filling in a lot of information about cost estimates, revenue and expense for different options. And I think we're going to come to some sort of preliminary report by the end of January, it appears. That would be good.
well, I mean, where is this going, Tom?
We are required to report to a town meeting, April 2nd. And at least 2 weeks ahead of that, to have a public meeting to discuss it in more depth than one can do at town meeting. So that's the
And-
timeline.
And how is your committee, is your committee working kind of harmoniously? Is everyone on the same page, or is there a difference of opinions?
Some people came in with predetermined outcomes, and that has not mellowed very much, but it's not a huge discord. We had one member who was pretty outspoken, who has resigned. But in a way that worked out because we had an extra member. We were supposed to have 9 members, and by some mistake, we ended up with 10 members. So we got back down to 9. And then I should also mention that our liaison from the Board of Selectmen has resigned. Paul Murphy had other obligations that prevented him from serving any longer, and the Board of Selectmen has not, I think, will not appoint a replacement. I heard 2 different reasons, but
Sorry, say that again?
I said I heard 2 different reasons, but I don't know what's the truth, why there will be no replacement.
Yeah, okay.
So we're down to 8.
Well, that's a pretty big committee. I mean, when you have 8 people trying to build a consensus, it's difficult.
That's enough, and our quorum is still 5 when you got 8 people, so. There we are, but we're meeting every first and third Wednesday.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's interesting.
One other thing, I had mentioned in a previous meeting, that group that wants to propose a net zero policy to be approved by the selectmen and the school committee. And they're interested in going around to other boards and committees to get their buy-in, and they wanted to come to us. They weren't ready for this meeting, but I think they will be by the next meeting. They've pretty much firmed up the draft resolution, and the background document is getting closer to finished as well. So I think we do want to see both before we can take up that item to see whether we want to vote to support that policy.
Okay.
So maybe in the next meeting, it could be an agenda item if they're ready.
Yeah, once you send it on, when you learn about that, just let Mary know.
Will do.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I got.
Okay. If there are no other member items, we'll move to our second public comment period. Anybody with their hands up, Kelsey?
Toby's got his hand up.
I have Toby with his hand up.
Okay,
You're unmuted, Toby.
Thank you. Toby Arsenian, 95 Granite Street. Once again, my request that you revise the section on housing balance, code words for affordable housing. You're proposing to open the floodgates at the area around the train station. You say 2 different things which don't match, that all of this has to happen. The state has ordered it. And then you say in the next breath that it may never happen and we're just enabling it and so forth. But if you're doing it under any guise, you need to fix that section first. I was distressed, really distressed by what I heard you say about the special permits and variances. And it's what the Board of Appeals does. Their wayward behavior is certainly not your fault. Although as citizens, you might consider going when they're being renewed, whether it's 3 years or 5, and speaking up, which I've done. It takes some gall, some nerve to object to appointing people. I give Herman Lilja credit for that, for nothing else. But the special permits, I spoke at some length to your board about that before you got going with the MAPC and your current efforts to revise the zoning, and said that you need to go back through the whole zoning code and identify all of the special permits, because it's my understanding, and I hope you'll correct me if I got it wrong, that unless they're specified in the zoning as special permits, the Board of Appeals cannot grant them. So indeed, you do have control of it, and you've got no right to shrug your shoulders and say it's unfortunate and we can't help it. You can help it. I think it makes sense, your proposal, to give yourself special permits for what you're trying to do, although what you're trying to do I don't approve of. There's another section that was given to the Board of Appeals. It's in there, badly needs correcting. That's the coastal floodplain section. The whole thing needs to be written. It's inoperative. It's nonsense as written. And it gives the Board of Appeals the special permit granting authority there. That needs to be rewritten so that whatever you're going to get or be given in that overlay zone, another overlay zone, is by right. Whether you're going to make it stiffer, more difficult, or loosen it up. I would say make it stiffer, but there'll be a lot of pushback on that. So, your discussion of what you would present at the public hearings. You're asking the voters when you come to the town meeting to say yes to all of this. As you well know, most of them won't have reviewed it beforehand. For those who care enough to go to the public hearing, I think you owe it to the public to explain all of the changes, not obviously relettering and things that are, but all of the substantive changes. And if you're not doing that, I don't think you're giving people a fair shake. Otherwise, how will they know? With my sieve brain, I'm sure there was more that I hoped to say, but that will be enough for now.
Okay. All righty. Any other members of the public? Nobody else wants to say anything?
Herm does.
Herman?
Just wanted to say that I have watched your proceedings. I understand your frustrations. I agree with Toby that you do have to be open to making sure that any substantive changes are in fact explained to the public at the hearing associated with the changes, overall changes for the bylaws. I think you must do that. As far as getting into the fray about the term of office for the Zoning Board of Appeals members, I'd duck it at the current time. Toby's already indicated in an oblique fashion that I don't approve of the current situation. In particular, I don't approve of what happens every 5 years when the fixed members, that is the fixed five, when they come up for review, there is really no review, so to speak. It's sort of a blanket approval, and I object to that. And they being the single group in the power structure of Rockport that has a term of office for 5 years, other than associated with housing. I guess the housing committee also has 5-year terms. And it's unique because it's a 5-member board and because one member is supposed to be renewed every year. So it sort of works out to be a 5-year term. It isn't dictated that it be a 5-year term, but if there's a mathematical way of changing it, somebody should look at it. Tom, come up with an approach, and maybe that's what you do. But the 5-year term of office for zoning board of appeals is not something that's at least not well received by me. Anyway, otherwise, you're having fun, so that's good.
Say, Herm, you are on a 5-member board with a 3-year term. Work it the same way.
Well, that's true. And I'm not saying it couldn't be done. It's just that it started off that way. Because I objected to the chairman's position because the chairman is consistently the strongest member who prevails and goes on and on. And it isn't that I won't bring it up in the future. I will. But I don't think it's for you people to bring it up.
Okay.
I think that would only get you into hot water. So
Yeah, well, I think the consensus is, Herman, that we're not going to bring it up
Yeah, right.
to worry about. So,
However, with town meeting coming up, we know there are members of the community who aren't afraid to bring motions to town meeting that aren't necessarily published in the warrant.
Well, they usually don't go too far, but, and that would be a major motion, so. Anyway.
okay.
Enough said.
Any more public comments? If not, you have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Motion to adjourn by Tom, seconded.
Harry.
Harry seconded.
yes.
Roll call vote. Peter,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and I'll vote in favor. Meeting is adjourned. It's 7:35, a little shorter than usual, but that's not a bad thing. So get out your snowshoes for tomorrow.
We're at the ready.
Okay, good night, everyone.
First of the year.
Good night.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Kelvin.
Yeah.